I know I'm only on one day a week. I get it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to jump on
10 minutes.
GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the House Bar Show, wow, and a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the House Bar Show, wow, and a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Welcome back to the show. So, lots also happened this week on Earth One. I feel like we should talk about Earth One a little bit. And then I have some hilarious news from MAGA-land because there's a bit of cat scratch fever going on over there, and it's pretty hysterical.
And
if I do say
also
so
in the
myself.
chat, some folks are wondering if you had a chance to hear Kamala's speech last night about
I did not.
Tennessee.
No, I have not heard it yet. I'm putting that aside. That's my Sunday review day, so I can go back and watch the whole thing. But I know about it, yes. So the March jobs report came out, and it was stubbornly good. 236,000 jobs created. Everybody's like, the end of the country is here because the number of hirings is decelerating slightly, down from 362 to 236. Which is 3 6s anywhere you read it. And so it's clearly the devil's market. But, and then the unemployment rate, which rose 0.1% last month, fell back to 3.5% because they reviewed the actual jobs created, and more jobs were created last month than they thought. And so it stayed steady, actually, for the last 3 months at 3.5%. The March jobs report showed hiring slowed last month, but likely not by enough to ease pressure on the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates in its efforts to slow inflation. Everybody's expecting a 0.25% basis points baked in. By the way, I got news for you. After this all shakes out, if the Fed was to park interest rates at 5%, you'd still have tons of room to borrow and grow on the returns that people are expecting and seeing worldwide in investment from a business standpoint anyways. And you still wouldn't be anywhere near the area where, what mortgages cost, in the 70s and 80s, for example. One of the biggest group of people, I would say, and the people clamoring about this is the rise in interest rates more than anyone else, are real estate investment groups, because there is a tipping point in the interest rate that you have to pay on a loan and the return on a piece of rental property. And,
Sure.
and depending on where it is, it can be anywhere between 4.1% and say, 6% you can get on your property. But that's hard to do. They average out. If you have a lot of properties, you're basically, real estate investment firms are getting about 4.1% guaranteed long term. And they park it in real estate for a reason, because those houses in theory aren't going anywhere. And if they do go someplace, you can insure them and you're fine. Once the interest rate for a loan gets up closer to 4%, the investment value of dealing with renters and the problems that can come with it and all the things that can happen in a house and that you have to take care of starts to dwindle really fast. And if you're fudging around 0.1% to justify an investment on a major scale, when you're a company like BlackRock or any of these other companies, it's hard to do, especially if there are other things out there, like even oil exploration and stuff like that, and mineral rights searching like that. The return, it's a lot more expenditure at front, but the return once you get it is way higher. So but it's not as reliable. It's more volatile. So you hedge those two against each other. So these giant real estate investment firms, like Trump has built his entire, fiefdom on, rely on unusually low real estate, the cost of borrowing money for real estate. Then you park money in it, you launder money in it, and then you can get money cheaper as an institutional borrower than any individual could possibly get. Like, Johnny, you and I might have a better credit score than any of the Trumps because of the myriad of bankruptcies that they have had and the
Sure.
millions of dollars that have vanished in profit from banks that have worked with them in the past. But that won't stop them most of the time from getting another loan to buy more properties that will maintain value because people need houses. And as long as we have a lack of supply in the housing market, that number can always be continually inflated. As a matter of fact, companies like BlackRock and others can buy houses that are on the cusp or in areas where they might, they could demolish them or they could build them up. And all they have to do is knock a few off the board, and it raises the cost of living everywhere else because there are fewer units available. Standard supply and demand. And when you control the supply and you can eliminate elements of supply, and it takes a long time to fix that supply, you're in a pretty solid space. But when the cost of borrowing money to do that, because you never do it with your own money, especially in real estate and those kind of things, because tornadoes, hurricanes, et cetera, your investors are going to get a little squirrely if you're only making 4.1% on this stuff and you're having to manipulate the market that much, and there's blowback because you're knocking down houses in poor neighborhoods because you want to raise the price and you're trying to force gentrify as opposed to genuinely gentrify, which is people investing back in houses that they get and making their neighborhoods better. Forced gentrification from companies like this there's a lot of social blowback on the companies, and they kind of, that's one of the factors they put in, right? Well, once you get up, once the Fed gets close to that number, real estate investors start going, it's less valuable for me to have this in houses and apartment buildings. And they sell them. And to get out before the prices go down because the interest rate is going up. And then they sit for a little while, and then somebody makes a deal on them, and then they sell them because they can't do the exact same. They can't make the same kind of level of profit until somebody buys it that wants to live in the damn thing for the rest of their lives, which is how houses should work. But increasingly, because money was so cheap to borrow, the two groups that benefited from this largely were Silicon Valley, because they can invest in vaporware and software, and we hope it'll turn into something, and if it does, it'll be magic money because we don't have to build a factory. And so everybody's throwing money after that. And real estate. That's why Trump wanted negative interest rates while he was in office. One of them was so that he could refinance the debt he created as president and not have it on the books as big as it was, because he could wipe out some of it, because he could literally start paring down the national debt by forcing people to pay the Fed to borrow money, or the Fed to give back money. It's so the inverse of actual borrowing and lending structures, like how they should actually work. And it would also, curiously enough, what do you think negative interest rates would do for a real estate developer who wants to snatch up a bunch of houses and hotels and tracts of land, huge tracts of land? One would think, especially if your sons are minding the store and they know exactly when you're going to pull the trigger on that thing, and that you got the inside scoop, you could issue a bond between 9 a.m. and 9:05, the day it happens, getting a jump on everybody else, because we've all seen Trading Places. That's one of the reasons why Trump wanted to drive that down, and it benefited his family the entire time, no question about that. They restructured most of their loans during that time because they could do it at such a low rate, and lock them in because I'm going to be president for 8 years and you better get on my good side. And so he got all these extra loans from these little weird banks that are now locked into these next to zero loans with this idiot. But now, once these interest rates start to get up to a certain point, they start getting into the human factor, into the area where normal people go, all right, I'm going to live in a house this long, and 5% of that for the loan over the course of 35 years, it's more than I would be paying before, but my parents paid 12 to 19% on their house, and I'm not going to pay that much for that house, but I'll pay, and then you start getting the cost of a house starts going down a little bit, and the value of that money that's in the house starts going along a little bit better. And then people go, well, if I can't make a major profit on my house, I'm not going to sell it and just move quickly. I'm going to stay in it like an investment. I'm going to go long with it. And it also means that true real estate developers who are building tracts of houses for sale to add supply have a reason to do so, because people aren't going to part with their house, because they want to wait. They're going to maybe add an extra 5 years to sell it so they can get more money out of it over the term. It's just not going to happen as fast. That part of it drives those folks crazy. And what's interesting is because, and we know this, Philip Bittner will be joining us in a minute, but because we are not experiencing monetary inflation, but supply shock caused by the shortening of supply chains all over the world because of our decoupling from China and the reshoring of American manufacturing and our limiting of goods coming from countries that use slave labor for cotton, I kid you not. Because of that, things are going to cost a little more. That's what the cost rise is. It's not monetary inflation. It's stuff's going to cost more because of the people involved. And unless you're pro-slavery, I think that's a good thing. We'll be back right after this with Philip Bittner joining us from Russia. It's the House Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide, now with 100% more. Johnny Million. He's got a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/itsjohnnyMillion. As do I. You can watch us right now. We'll be back right after this.